It's 2 in the morning. The crying hasn't stopped in 20 minutes. Your whole body is tense, your jaw is tight, and some primal part of you feels like the sound itself is an emergency, even though nothing is actually wrong. You're not imagining that urgency. The real answer is far stranger. Your nervous system is responding exactly the way it was built to respond, because for nearly all of human history, a crying baby you couldn't calm really was an emergency. Human infants are strange creatures, biologically speaking. Compared to almost every other primate, they're born absurdly helpless. A baby chimpanzee can cling to its mother's fur within hours of birth. A human infant can't even hold up its own head. It can't feed itself, move itself, or regulate its own body temperature. And it has exactly one tool available to signal distress to the world around it. Crying. That cry isn't random noise. It's a precision instrument, shaped by evolution to be almost impossible to ignore. A psychiatrist named John Bowlby spent decades studying why infants and caregivers bond the way they do, and his research became the foundation of what's now called attachment theory. Bowlby proposed that infant crying wasn't simply discomfort leaking out. It was a deliberate evolutionary signal, engineered to trigger an immediate caregiving response in nearby adults. In a world without cribs with monitors, without formula, without any backup plan, a baby that couldn't summon help quickly was a baby unlikely to survive. So evolution built the cry to be aversive. Genuinely, physically unpleasant to hear, specifically so that adults nearby couldn't simply tune it out. This explains something that new parents often feel almost as a physical sensation, the impossibility of ignoring a crying baby, even someone else's baby, even a stranger's baby in another room. Your nervous system isn't being dramatic. It's doing precisely what it evolved to do. But here's the detail that reframes the entire picture. In the modern world, when a baby cries at 2 in the morning, the assumption is usually that one person, most often the mother, is solely responsible for calming it. Alone, in a quiet house, with no backup. That's almost certainly not how it worked for most of human history. An anthropologist named Sarah Blaffer HRDY spent years studying how mothers actually raised children across different human societies, including surviving hunter-gatherer groups, and she found something that challenged a lot of assumptions about parenting. Human children, she argued, were never raised by mothers alone. They were raised through what she called cooperative breeding, a system where care was distributed across grandmothers, aunts, older siblings, and unrelated group members, sometimes referred to as alloparents. In many hunter-gatherer societies she studied, infants were passed between multiple caregivers within hours of being born, and continued to be held, fed, and soothed by a rotating cast of trusted adults throughout early childhood. This wasn't a nice cultural bonus. HRDY argued it was structural. Human infants require an enormous, sustained amount of energy and attention to survive, more than one adult could realistically provide alone while also gathering food, avoiding danger, and caring for other children. A crying baby at 2 in the morning wasn't one person's problem to solve in isolation. It was the entire group's problem, because the group's survival depended on that baby surviving too. So when the crying finally stopped, it likely wasn't always the mother who stopped it. It might have been a grandmother with decades of practiced soothing. An older sibling who'd learned the exact bounce that worked. An aunt who simply took over so exhausted parents could sleep. The weight of a crying child was never meant to rest on one exhausted set of shoulders in a silent room.
This is where a pediatric researcher named Ronald Barr adds another layer. Barr studied infant crying patterns across cultures and found something surprising. In societies where infants are held almost constantly and cared for by multiple people throughout the day, crying episodes tend to be shorter and less intense than in cultures where infants spend more time alone or with a single caregiver. Constant physical contact and a rotating, well-rested set of caregivers appear to actually change how much and how long babies cry, not just how bearable it feels for the adults involved. Think about what that means for how modern parenting actually feels. A single exhausted person, alone at 2 in the morning, with no relief in sight, isn't failing at some natural, instinctive skill everyone else seems to have mastered. They're attempting a job that, for nearly all of human history, was never done alone. The isolation itself, not the crying, may be the unnatural part of the equation. This reframes something else too, the specific kind of exhaustion new parents describe, a bone-deep depletion that feels different from ordinary tiredness. Your nervous system isn't just tired from lost sleep. It may be straining against an ancient expectation, a background assumption, built over hundreds of thousands of years, that backup was always supposed to be nearby. When that backup doesn't exist, the body doesn't simply adjust and move on quietly. It registers the absence as a kind of chronic alarm, because for your ancestors, an unsupported caregiver was a genuinely dangerous situation for both parent and child. There's something almost radical in this idea, once you sit with it. The instinct to ask for help with a crying baby isn't weakness. It's not admitting you can't handle something everyone before you handled alone. It's the opposite. It's the correct, evolutionarily accurate response. Every successful human society that has ever existed solved this exact problem the same way, by refusing to let it be solved by one person alone. So what did ancient humans actually do when a child wouldn't stop crying? They didn't have a manual. They didn't have quiet rooms with white noise machines. What they had was each other, a rotating web of grandmothers, aunts, siblings, and friends, all sharing a job too large for any single set of arms. The crying still happened. It just never happened in isolation. It's 2 in the morning again, or some version of it, some moment where you're carrying more than feels sustainable, alone in a room that suddenly feels too quiet and too loud at the same time. But this time, you understand what that ache for backup actually is. It isn't a personal failing. It's the oldest, most accurate instinct you have, still reaching, the way it always has, for the village that was supposed to be standing right beside you.